The sound of my suitcase wheels echoing across marble floors felt too loud in the cathedral-like silence of the Volkov mansion. I'd worked with traumatized children in hospital wards that hummed with machinery, in group homes where chaos was the baseline. But this silence, this was different. This was the silence of grief so profound it had soaked into the walls themselves. "Miss Castellano, Mr. Volkov is waiting in his study," the security guard, Adrian, according to his nameplate, said without making eye contact. His hand rested near his hip in a way that suggested the bulge beneath his jacket wasn't decorative. I'd known what I was walking into when I accepted this position. Dante Volkov wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous. The kind of man whose name was whispered in certain circles, whose business dealings existed in gray areas that bled into black. But the referral had come through Dr. Chen at the Children's Hospital, and when she'd called me at midnight 3 weeks ago, her voice had been raw with desperation. "Vivi, I need you to say yes before I explain," she'd said. "A little girl is dying inside, and you're the only person I trust to reach her." I'd said yes. I always did when children were involved. The study doors were heavy oak, carved with intricate patterns that probably cost more than my yearly salary at the hospital. Adrian knocked twice, a sharp military rhythm, then stepped aside. "Enter," came a voice from within. Deep, controlled, with an accent that softened certain consonants. Russian, I recognized, though faint. The man behind the desk didn't look up immediately. He was signing documents with fluid precision, his movements economical in a way that suggested everything he did was deliberate. When he finally raised his eyes to mine, I understood why people feared Dante Volkov. His gaze was steel gray and penetrating, the kind that seemed to catalog every detail, every vulnerability. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and hard lines. A tailored charcoal suit emphasized broad shoulders, and even seated, his presence dominated the room. "Miss Castellano," he said, my name precise on his tongue. "Dr. Chen speaks highly of your work with traumatized children." "I do what I can," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the way my pulse had kicked up. I'd dealt with intimidating people before. Overprotective parents, hostile social workers, bureaucrats who viewed music therapy as frivolous. But this man was in a different category entirely. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. We have much to discuss regarding my daughter." As I settled into the leather chair, I noticed the photograph on his desk, the only personal item in an otherwise sterile office. A dark-haired woman with kind eyes holding a baby wrapped in white lace. His wife, Katerina. The woman Dr. Chen had told me died 2 years ago in what the police had ruled an accident, though the whispers suggested otherwise. "Isabel is 6 years old," Dante began, his voice carefully neutral in a way that suggested enormous control. "She hasn't slept through the night since her mother's death. The terrors are violent, screaming, thrashing, completely inconsolable. We've tried medications, traditional therapy, sleep specialists. Nothing works." I pulled out my notepad, not because I needed to take notes. I'd memorized everything Dr. Chen had told me, but because it gave my hands something to do. "Tell me about the episodes. When do they typically occur?" "Between midnight and 3 in the morning, always." Something flickered in his eyes. "She wakes screaming for her mother. Sometimes she doesn't recognize me, calls me a stranger, begs me not to hurt her." The pain in those last words was so raw it made my chest tighten. Whatever else Dante Volkov might be, he was a father watching his child suffer. Has she talked about what she sees? What triggers the terrors? He shook his head. She doesn't remember them, or claims she doesn't. He paused, jaw tightening. The doctors say it's trauma manifesting, that her young mind can't process what happened. "And what did happen, Mr. Volkov?" I asked gently. "I need to understand the full picture." His expression shuddered. My wife died in a car accident. Isabel was in the vehicle. She was physically unharmed but witnessed everything. The clinical way he delivered those facts told me more than the words themselves. This man had built walls so high around his grief that even discussing it required emotional lockdown. "I'll need to spend significant time with Isabel," I said. "Music therapy for night terrors requires building trust first. She'll need to feel safe with me before we can begin addressing the core trauma." "You'll live here," he said. "Not a question. Full time. The staff will provide anything you need. Your room will be adjacent to Isabel's, with a connecting door." I blinked. "Mr. Volkov, I have my own apartment. I can certainly stay overnight when needed, but—" "You'll live here," he repeated, steel underlying the calm. "My daughter needs consistency. She needs someone present, not someone who arrives for scheduled sessions then leaves. Dr. Chen said you were committed to your patients. I'm offering you the resources to fully commit." The way he phrased it, as if he were doing me a favor rather than making a demand, would have been amusing if it weren't so unsettling. But he was right about one thing. Healing Isabel would require immersion, not intermittent visits. "I'll need creative freedom," I countered. "My methods aren't conventional. Music therapy, breathing techniques, sometimes unconventional sleep rituals. If you're going to micromanage my approach—" "I don't micromanage competent people," he interrupted. "I give them objectives and let them work. Your objective is simple. Help my daughter sleep without terror. How you accomplish that is your concern." Something about the exchange felt like a negotiation, like I was being tested to see if I'd push back or simply comply. I'd learned early in my career that setting boundaries with powerful people was crucial. "Then we have an agreement," I said. "But I'll need access to Isabel's full medical history, any therapy notes from previous attempts, and complete disclosure about the night of the accident. I can't heal trauma I don't understand." For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. "Adrian will provide the medical files. As for the accident—" He paused, seemingly weighing how much to reveal. "The details are in the police report. I'll have it sent to your room." "When do I start?" "Tonight. Isabel is expecting you." He rose, signaling the meeting's end. "Natasha, our housekeeper, will show you to your quarters. Dinner is at 6. Isabel eats in the kitchen with the staff. She finds the formal dining room overwhelming." As I stood, gathering my bag, his voice stopped me at the door. "Miss Castellano." I turned. "My daughter has been through specialists from 3 countries, expensive experts with prestigious credentials and innovative treatments. None of them helped. Dr. Chen says you're different, that you see what others miss." His gaze held mine. "I hope she's right, for Isabel's sake." The weight of that hope settled on my shoulders like a physical thing. I simply nodded and left. Natasha turned out to be a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and the efficient manner of someone who'd been running this household for years. She led me through corridors lined with artwork that probably belonged in museums, past rooms so pristine they looked unlived in. "Mr. Volkov keeps to himself mostly," she said as we climbed a sweeping staircase. "Works late, leaves early, but with Isabel." Her expression softened. "He tries. He just doesn't know how to reach her anymore." "Tell me about Isabel," I prompted. "Beyond the night terrors. What does she like? What makes her smile?" Natasha's face brightened. "Music. She used to dance around the house when her mother played piano. Now she won't go near the music room. It's been locked since Mrs. Volkov died. But sometimes I catch her humming to herself when she thinks no one's listening. Music. Of course. The thread I'd need to follow. My room was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft creams and blues, with French doors opening onto a private balcony. But it was the connecting door that drew my attention. The entrance to Isabel's world. "She's in there now," Natasha said quietly, "resting, though she rarely sleeps during the day anymore. too afraid of the dreams. After Natasha left, I stood at that connecting door for a long moment, my hand resting on the cool metal of the doorknob. Behind it was a 6-year-old girl trapped in trauma, and a father who'd hired me as a last desperate hope. I thought of the photograph on Dante's desk, of Katerina's kind eyes, of the secrets Dr. Chen had hinted at but wouldn't fully explain. And I thought of the night 16 years ago when I was 12, huddled in a hospital corridor after my own mother's death, when a dark-haired woman with gentle hands had sat beside me and sung until the shaking stopped. Katerina Volkov, volunteering in the children's ward. Katerina, who'd seen a broken girl and offered kindness without condition. She'd saved me that night. And in the years that followed, during my darkest moments, she'd been the steady presence that kept me from falling apart completely. She'd taught me the lullabies her own mother had sung to her, the ones I still hummed when I couldn't sleep. She'd shown me how to make the traditional Russian honey cake that tasted like comfort. She'd given me hope when I had none. I owed Katerina Volkov everything. And now her daughter needed saving. I knocked softly on the connecting door and waited, my heart hammering against my ribs with a mixture of nerves and determination. "Come in," came a small voice. I opened the door to find Isabel sitting cross-legged on an enormous bed, surrounded by stuffed animals that seemed to form a protective barrier around her. She had her father's dark hair, but her mother's eyes, warm brown instead of cold gray, and the delicate features of a child who should have been carefree but instead looked ancient with worry. "Hi, Isabel," I said, staying in the doorway. "I'm Vivian, but you can call me Vivi if you want. Your dad hired me to help you sleep better." She studied me with an intensity that reminded me uncomfortably of her father. "Are you a doctor?" "Sort of. I'm a music therapist. I help people who are having trouble with feelings or sleep or scary thoughts by using music and sounds." "Music doesn't help," she said flatly. "Nothing helps." I stepped into the room but didn't approach the bed. "Can I tell you a secret?" She nodded warily. "When I was not much older than you, I had really bad dreams too, every night. And a very kind lady taught me a special song that made them stop." Interest sparked in her eyes. "What kind of song?" "A lullaby, from a place far away, where snow falls like magic and people make wishes on the first star." I hummed a few bars of the melody Katerina had taught me all those years ago, a Russian lullaby about moonlight and guardian angels. Isabel's eyes widened. "My mama used to sing that." My heart clenched. "Did she? It's a beautiful song. Maybe sometime you could teach me the words she used, and I could help you remember how she sang it." For the first time, I saw something in her face besides fear and exhaustion, a flicker of curiosity, of possibility. "Can you stay until I fall asleep tonight?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "Everyone else leaves when they think I'm asleep, but I know they're gone, and that's when the scary things come." "I'll stay as long as you need me to," I promised. "In fact, I'm going to be in the room right next door from now on. If you get scared in the middle of the night, all you have to do is knock on that door, and I'll be there." She considered this. "Really? You won't leave?" "Really. I promise." What I didn't know then, as Isabel's tiny hand reached out to touch mine and seal that promise, was that Dante Volkov was watching, that he'd installed cameras in his daughter's room weeks ago because he couldn't bear to witness her terror in person, that every word I'd just spoken, every note I'd hummed, every promise I'd made had been recorded, and that the man in his study, surrounded by monitors showing his daughter's room from 3 different angles, had just heard the lullaby his dead wife used to sing to their child, the lullaby no one outside their family should have known. The first week passed in careful observation. I didn't push Isabel, didn't force connection. Instead, I simply existed in her space, reading quietly while she played, humming soft melodies while she drew, being present without demanding anything in return. The night terrors came like clockwork. The first one I witnessed nearly broke my heart. At 2:47 a.m., Isabel's screams tore through the silence. I was in her room in seconds, finding her thrashing in the tangle of sheets, her small body rigid with terror. Her eyes were open but unseeing, locked in whatever nightmare held her captive. "Mama, no. Mama, wake up. Please wake up." I knew better than to restrain her. That would only amplify the terror. Instead, I sat on the floor beside her bed and began to sing, low and steady. The lullaby Katerina had taught me, the one that had soothed my own childhood fears. It took 23 minutes for Isabel's screams to fade to whimpers, then silence. She never fully woke, her young mind mercifully unable to hold on to the horror once the episode passed. But I stayed there on the floor until dawn, watching her chest rise and fall, humming whenever she stirred. What I didn't see was Dante Volkov in his study, frozen in his chair as my voice filtered through the speakers. The same song, the same melody, the exact inflection Katerina had used. His hand hovered over the phone, ready to call Adrian, to demand answers about this woman who somehow knew his wife's private lullabies. But he didn't call. Instead, he watched and waited. By the end of the first week, I'd established a routine. We spent afternoons in Isabel's room, exploring different instruments I'd brought from my collection. A small kalimba, a rain stick, soft chimes that sounded like distant bells. I taught her breathing exercises disguised as games. Let's breathe in for 4 counts like we're smelling flowers, then out for 6 like we're blowing out birthday candles. The terrors still came, but their intensity began to shift. 3 nights after I arrived, Isabel's episode lasted 18 minutes instead of her usual 30. By the end of the week, she was down to 12 minutes, and for the first time in 2 years, she slept until 5 a.m. without incident. Dante noticed. He started appearing at breakfast, something Natasha said he rarely did. He'd sit at the far end of the kitchen table with his coffee and tablet, ostensibly working. But I could feel his attention tracking every interaction between Isabel and me. "Vivi, can we make the honey cake today?" Isabel asked one morning, her spoon hovering over her oatmeal. "The one with the layers and the cream?" I went very still. I'd mentioned that cake exactly once, in passing, 3 days ago. It was Katerina's recipe, the one she'd taught me during those secret afternoons when I was 16 and drowning in foster care, when she'd found me sleeping in the hospital parking garage, and instead of calling security, had brought me home. "How do you know about that cake?" Dante's voice cut across the kitchen, sharp enough that Isabel flinched. "Vivi said it was special," she replied, confusion clouding her features. "That someone nice taught her how to make it." His eyes found mine across the table, and I saw the calculation there. The suspicion. "What else has Vivi taught you?" "Lots of things," Isabel said, warming to the topic now. "How to breathe when I'm scared. How to make rain sounds with the stick. And she knows Mama's lullaby, the one about the moon and the angels." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Natasha busied herself at the sink, suddenly very interested in scrubbing an already clean pot. "Perhaps Miss Castellano and I should discuss her methods," Dante said, his tone deceptively mild. "Isabel, finish your breakfast. Natasha will take you to the garden afterward." I followed him to his study, my mind racing through possible explanations, excuses, anything that wouldn't expose the full truth. The door closed behind us with an ominous click. "Sit," he commanded, moving to stand by the window, his back to me. The morning light caught the silver at his temples, making him look older than 34. Tired. "How did you know my wife?" There was no point in lying. She volunteered at the children's hospital where I work. Years ago. We crossed paths. He turned slowly, and the look on his face made my blood run cold. Crossed paths, an interesting phrase for what appears to be an intimate knowledge of my family's private traditions. He moved toward his desk, pulling out a tablet and tapping the screen. I want you to watch something. He turned the screen toward me, and my own face appeared, footage from Isabel's room. The camera angle was hidden, probably in a smoke detector or air vent. I watched myself humming the lullaby that first day, saw the exact moment Isabel's face had lit up with recognition. That camera has been there for 3 weeks, Dante said quietly. I've watched every specialist fail to connect with my daughter. And then you arrive, singing songs my wife sang, knowing recipes my wife made, using the exact breathing techniques she used when Isabel had nightmares as a toddler. He paused. So I'll ask again, Miss Castellano. How did you know my wife? The truth sat heavy on my tongue. Dangerous and necessary. She saved me, I said finally. When I was 16. I was homeless, sleeping in the hospital parking garage. She found me one night, and instead of having security remove me, she brought me to a small apartment she rented. She let me stay there for 2 years, until I aged out of the system and could get my own place. His expression didn't change, but I saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the edge of the desk. Katerina never mentioned this. She wouldn't have. She said it was our secret, that you had enemies who might use kindness as weakness. I met his gaze steadily. She taught me those songs during the nights when I couldn't sleep. Showed me how to make that cake when I needed to feel connected to something stable. She gave me hope when I had none, Mr. Volkov. And when she died, my voice cracked despite my best efforts. I lost the closest thing to a mother I'd ever known. Silence stretched between us, thick with implications and unspoken questions. Finally, Dante moved to his desk chair and sank into it, suddenly looking every one of his years plus a decade more. Why didn't you mention this when you arrived? Would you have hired me if you knew? I countered. A woman with a secret connection to your dead wife, showing up to work with your traumatized daughter. It would have looked suspicious at best, calculated at worst. It looks exactly that way now, he pointed out, but some of the edge had left his voice. Dr. Chen recommended you. Did you manipulate that referral? No. I didn't even know Isabel was your daughter until Dr. Chen explained the situation. Your last name is different from Katerina's maiden name. I had no way of making the connection. I leaned forward, desperate for him to understand. But when I did realize who she was, I couldn't say no. Katerina saved me, Mr. Volkov. She gave me a future. The least I could do was try to help her daughter. He studied me for a long moment, those steel-gray eyes cataloging every micro-expression, every tell. I'd been evaluated by suspicious social workers and hostile foster parents my entire childhood. I knew how to hold steady under scrutiny. But Dante Volkov was different. His gaze felt like it could peel back layers, expose secrets I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten them myself. My daughter is sleeping better, he said finally. For the first time in 2 years, she's showing signs of improvement. That matters more than my suspicions about your motives. He paused. But understand this, Miss Castellano. I will be watching. Everything you do, everything you say to Isabel, will be monitored. If I suspect for one moment that you're using my wife's memory to manipulate my daughter or gain access to my family for any ulterior purpose, you'll regret it. The threat was clear, delivered with the same calm precision he probably used to issue much more violent orders. But beneath it, I heard something else. Desperation. This man would do anything to protect his daughter, including threatening the one person who was finally helping her heal. I understand, I said quietly. And for what it's worth, I have no ulterior motives. I'm here for Isabel, nothing more." He nodded once, dismissing me. But as I reached the door, his voice stopped me again. "The honey cake. Make it with her today." Something in his tone had softened, just barely. It was Katerina's favorite. Isabel loved helping her mother in the kitchen. I turned back to find him staring at the photograph on his desk, Katerina and baby Isabel, frozen in a moment of happiness that felt like another lifetime. "I will," I promised. That afternoon, Isabel and I commandeered the kitchen. Natasha watched with barely concealed amusement as we measured flour and honey, as I showed Isabel how to fold the batter with gentle strokes, just as her mother had taught me. "Mama used to let me crack the eggs," Isabel said, carefully separating the shells from the yolks. "She said I was the best egg cracker in the whole house." "Your mama was right," I agreed, watching her concentrate with the tip of her tongue between her teeth, a gesture so reminiscent of Katerina it made my chest ache. "You're definitely the best egg cracker I've ever seen." As the cake baked, filling the kitchen with the scent of honey and vanilla, Isabel climbed onto the counter beside me, her small legs swinging. "Vivi, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think Mama sent you to help me?" The question caught me off guard. I looked down at this tiny girl who'd endured so much loss, who'd witnessed horrors no child should see, and saw the desperate hope in her eyes. Hope that her mother was still watching over her somehow, still protecting her even from beyond death. "I think," I said carefully, "that your mama loved you so much that her love is still here, even though she can't be. And maybe that love led me to you. Does that make sense?" Isabel nodded slowly, processing this. Then she leaned against my shoulder, a gesture of trust that nearly undid me. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too, sweetheart." What I didn't know was that Dante had joined the monitoring remotely, watching from his office downtown on his phone, that he'd heard every word of that exchange, that Isabel's question, "Do you think Mama sent you to help me?" had hit him like a physical blow, because he'd been asking himself the same question since finding the footage of me singing Katerina's lullaby, wondering if this was coincidence or something more. If his wife, who'd always believed in signs and fate and guardian angels, had somehow orchestrated this from whatever place she'd gone. That night, Isabel's terror came at 1:23 a.m., earlier than usual, which often meant it would be worse. I was ready, positioned in the chair beside her bed, my guitar in hand. I'd been experimenting with live music during the episodes, trying to find frequencies and rhythms that could penetrate the nightmare state. "Mama, the car. Mama, please." I began to play, soft and steady. Not the lullaby this time, but an improvisation. Minor chords that acknowledged the fear, then slowly, gradually shifting toward major progressions, like walking from darkness toward light. And I sang. Words that came from somewhere deep and instinctual, a combination of the Russian lullabies Katerina had taught me and melodies I'd developed through years of working with traumatized children. Isabel's screaming didn't stop immediately, but something changed. Her thrashing slowed. Her breathing, which had been rapid and panicked, began to synchronize with the rhythm of my playing. 7 minutes into the episode, her shortest yet, her eyes focused. Actually focused, looking at me with recognition instead of terror. "Vivi?" Her voice was small, confused. "I can hear you. In the dream. I can hear you." My heart hammered, but I kept playing, kept singing. This was breakthrough territory. Actual awareness during a night terror was almost unheard of. "I'm right here, Bella. You're safe. Follow my voice back." In his study, surrounded by monitors, Dante Volkov watched his daughter return from the nightmare that had held her captive for 2 years. Watched her small hand reach out and grasp Vivian's, anchoring herself to reality. and he made a decision that would change everything. The morning after Isabel's breakthrough, I found Dante waiting for me in the kitchen at 6 a.m. His hair was disheveled, shirt untucked, signs that he'd been up all night. A tumbler of what looked like whiskey sat untouched beside his laptop. "She remembered," he said without preamble. "This morning when she woke up, she remembered the terror. And she remembered you pulling her out of it." I poured myself coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "That's actually a good sign. It means her mind is processing the trauma instead of completely dissociating from it. We can work with conscious memories. How long were you planning to keep your connection to my wife a secret?" The question was quiet but loaded with something I couldn't quite identify. Not anger exactly. Something raw. "I wasn't keeping it secret to deceive you," I said, meeting his gaze over the rim of my mug. "I was protecting it. Katerina asked me to never tell anyone about those 2 years. She said your world was dangerous, that kindness could be weaponized by your enemies. I was honoring her wishes." He stood abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the garden where morning light was just beginning to break through. "Tell me about her. The Katerina you knew. Not my wife, not Isabel's mother. The woman who saved a homeless 16-year-old. The request caught me off guard. I'd expected more interrogation, more suspicion. Not this need to hear about his wife from someone who'd known a different side of her. "She was kind," I began slowly, "but not soft. She had this way of seeing straight through your excuses to what you really needed. The first night I met her, I tried to act tough, said I was fine sleeping in that garage. She looked at me for about 5 seconds and said, 'Fine is a lie people tell when they've forgotten what truth feels like. Come with me.'" A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips. "That sounds like her. She never pitied me, never made me feel like a charity case. Instead, she treated me like I was already the person I was trying to become." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, needing the anchor. She'd have me over every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. We'd cook together, and she'd tell me stories about growing up in Moscow. About her grandmother, who survived the siege of Leningrad by remembering beauty, memorizing poetry, singing songs, holding on to humanity when the world tried to strip it away. "Babushka Natalia," Dante said quietly. "Katerina was named after her mother, but she was raised by her grandmother. She used to say that's where she learned that surviving wasn't enough. You had to remember why you wanted to survive." I nodded. She taught me the same thing. When I was at my lowest, convinced I'd never amount to anything, she'd make me list 3 beautiful things I'd noticed that day. A bird's song, the way light hit water, a stranger's kindness. She said beauty was proof that the world was worth fighting for. Dante turned back to face me, and I was startled to see moisture in his eyes. "She kept a journal. Did you know that? Pages and pages of observations about light and sound and small moments of grace." His voice roughened. "After she died, I couldn't bring myself to read them. It hurt too much to see the world through her eyes when she was no longer in it." The confession hung between us, intimate and unexpected. This man who commanded fear from hardened criminals was sharing his grief with me, a near stranger. "The night she died," he continued, each word seeming to cost him, "we'd argued about my business, about the risks I was taking, about whether I could ever be the man she deserved. She took Isabel and left, said she needed time to think. And then..." He stopped, jaw working. "The accident," I finished softly. "It wasn't an accident." The words came out flat, factual. The brake lines were cut, professional job, one of my enemies sending a message by taking the thing I loved most. His hands clenched into fists. I spent 6 months hunting them down, every single person involved. And when I found them, He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The cold fury in his eyes told me everything. Isabel was in the car, I said, piecing it together. She saw her mother die because someone wanted to hurt you. She saw her mother bleed out while trapped in the wreckage, waiting for emergency services. For 17 minutes she sat in that back seat, screaming for Katerina to wake up, while my wife. He swallowed hard. The night terrors are her reliving those 17 minutes. Over and over. The car. The blood. Her mother's eyes going empty. My heart shattered for this little girl, for the trauma she carried. And you've been watching her relive it on those monitors, night after night, punishing yourself because you can't take it away. His eyes snapped to mine. How did you... I know what guilt looks like, Mr. Volkov. I've worn it myself. I set down my mug. But torturing yourself by watching doesn't help, Isabel. What helps is what we did last night. Breaking through the dissociation. Giving her an anchor to reality. Teaching her that she can survive the memories without being consumed by them. You pulled her out, he said, something like wonder in his voice. In 7 minutes, you did what 2 years of specialists couldn't do. Because I knew the right frequency to reach her. I hesitated, then decided he deserved the full truth. Katerina taught me those lullabies during my worst nights, when I'd wake up screaming from my own mother's death, from the foster homes where I wasn't safe, from all the trauma I'd accumulated. She'd sing until the fear subsided. I'm just passing on what she gave me. Dante studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. She chose well. What do you mean? To save you. To invest in you. He moved closer. Close enough that I could see the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. Katerina had this gift for seeing potential in broken things. She saw it in me when we first met. An angry young man who'd inherited his father's empire, and all the blood that came with it. She gentled me, made me believe I could be more than my worst instincts. You loved her very much, I observed quietly. She was the only light in a very dark world. His voice dropped. And when she died, I wanted to burn everything down. Destroy everyone who'd ever wronged me. Salt the earth. Leave nothing standing. The only thing that stopped me was Isabel, because Katerina's last gift to me was our daughter, and I couldn't let my rage consume the one piece of her I had left. In that moment, I saw past the dangerous mob boss to the grieving husband underneath. The man who'd lost his anchor and was drowning in guilt and rage, held afloat only by a 6-year-old girl who needed him to keep breathing. She's getting better, I said. Isabel. She's healing. Last night was proof. Because of you. He reached out, his fingers catching a strand of my hair that had escaped its braid. The gesture was intimate, almost unconscious, and I froze. You're giving my daughter back to me. Giving me back the ability to be her father, instead of just another person she's afraid of in the night. Our eyes met and held. I should have stepped back, should have re-established professional distance. But something in his gaze pinned me in place. Gratitude and grief and something else I didn't want to name. The moment broke when Natasha entered, stopping short at the sight of us standing so close. Oh, excuse me, I didn't realize. I can come back. It's fine, I said quickly, stepping away from Dante. I should check on Isabel anyway. I fled, my heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Over the next month, everything changed. Isabel's terrors decreased to 3 nights a week, then 2, then, miraculously, only once a week. She started sleeping until dawn, waking with smiles instead of screams. She began joining her father for meals, started requesting trips to the garden, even asked if we could unlock the music room. The day Dante led us to the music room, His hands trembled slightly as he turned the key. The door opened on a space frozen in time. Katerina's piano still centered by the window, sheet music open to the last piece she'd played, photographs of her and Isabel covering one wall. Isabel stood in the doorway for a long moment, then walked slowly to the piano. Her small fingers touched the keys reverently. Mama loved this room. She did, Dante agreed, his voice rough. She said music was truth without words, that it could say what language couldn't. Vivi says that too. Isabel looked back at me. Will you play something? For Mama? I sat at Katerina's piano, feeling the weight of the request. My fingers found the keys, and I began to play the lullaby that had started everything. The one Katerina had taught me in that secret apartment, the one that had helped Isabel begin to heal. As I sang, I felt rather than saw Dante move to stand behind me. His hand came to rest on my shoulder, a gesture of gratitude, of connection, of something I didn't dare examine too closely. When the song ended, Isabel was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. But when she looked up at her father, she was smiling. Mama would have liked that Vivi knows her songs. Yes, Dante said, his voice carrying a strange note. She would have. That night, after Isabel fell asleep without incident for the 7th night in a row, I found Dante waiting for me in the corridor outside my room. We need to talk, he said, about an arrangement that will benefit us both. I followed him to his study, that familiar room where this had all begun 6 weeks ago. But everything felt different now. The walls I'd sensed between us had thinned, though I wasn't sure when it had happened. Isabel is healing, he began, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if I wanted one. Because of you. Because of the connection you have to her mother, the knowledge you carry, the care you've shown. He handed me a glass. But there's a problem. What kind of problem? My enemies are circling again. They see Isabel as weak point, the heir to my organization, vulnerable because of her trauma. His jaw tightened. There have been 3 attempts to gather information about her in the past 2 weeks. Bribes offered to staff, surveillance detected near her school, questions asked in the right circles. Cold dread settled in my stomach. You think they'll target her? I think they already are. And when they discover she's improving, that she's becoming stable enough to potentially testify about her mother's death. He didn't finish the thought. What are you proposing? Dante set down his glass and looked at me with those steel gray eyes. A business arrangement. You pretend to be my fiancé for 1 year. We present a united front. You as Isabel's future stepmother, someone with reason to be constantly in her life and mine. It provides cover for your presence and makes you untouchable to my enemies. I stared at him. You want me to fake an engagement? I want to protect my daughter, and you. He moved closer. If word gets out that you're just an employee, a therapist, you become expendable in their calculations. But as my fiancée, my future wife, you become part of the family, protected by the same forces that protect Isabel and me. And what do I get out of this arrangement? I asked, trying to ignore how my pulse had kicked up at the word wife. The clinic you've always wanted. I know you've been saving for years, trying to open a music therapy center for traumatized children. I'll fund it completely. Building, equipment, staff, everything. Full operational budget for 5 years. He paused. All you have to do is wear my ring and play the part convincingly. It was too much, too generous. Why would you do that? Because Katerina would have wanted it, he said simply. She believed in your work, in your potential. This is me honoring her memory by making sure her investment in you bears fruit. I should have said no, should have seen the danger in tangling myself further into this world, this family, this man's complicated life. but I thought of all the children I could help with a fully funded clinic. All the Isabels out there who needed someone to sing them back from their nightmares. 1 year, I said. And then we stage a quiet breakup, and I walk away with the clinic. 1 year? He agreed, extending his hand. We have an accord. I took his hand, sealing the bargain. His fingers were warm, strong, and as they closed around mine, I felt the first tremor of warning that this arrangement might not stay businesslike for long. When do we start? I asked. Tomorrow. He released my hand, reaching into his desk drawer. There's a charity gala. All of my associates will be there. We'll announce our engagement publicly, make it official. He pulled out a ring box, and my breath caught. Inside was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, Katerina's ring. I recognized it from photographs. I can't wear that, I whispered. It was hers. And she would want you to have it. His voice was certain. She saved you, Vivian. You're saving her daughter. This connects the circle. As he slid the ring onto my finger, I realized I'd just agreed to something far more complicated than a simple business arrangement. I'd agreed to walk into Dante Volkov's world, wearing his dead wife's ring, pretending to love him, all while trying to keep my heart from making the lie into truth. The charity gala was held at the Imperial Hotel, a glittering affair where wealth and power mingled under crystal chandeliers. I stood before the full-length mirror in my room, barely recognizing myself in the midnight blue gown Dante had sent. The sapphire ring caught the light every time I moved, a constant reminder of the deception I was about to embrace. You look beautiful, Vivi, Isabel said from where she sat on my bed, watching me with bright eyes. Natasha had agreed to stay with her tonight, though Isabel had insisted on seeing me all fancy before I left. Thank you, sweetheart. I knelt beside her, careful not to wrinkle the gown. I'll be back before you know it. Papa said you're going to be my new mama. Her voice was careful, testing. Is that true? My heart clenched. We'd agreed to tell Isabel a version of the truth, that Dante and I had grown close, that we wanted to be a family. But sitting here, looking into this child's hopeful eyes, the lie felt heavier than I'd anticipated. Your papa and I care about each other very much, I said, which was true enough. And I'll always be here for you no matter what. You know that, right? She nodded, then threw her arms around my neck. I'm glad it's you. Mama would be happy it's you. The words were a knife to my chest. If Katerina were alive, none of this would be happening. But she wasn't. And I was here, wearing her ring, about to pretend to love her husband. Dante was waiting at the foot of the stairs when I descended. He wore a black tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders, his dark hair swept back, the silver at his temples catching the light. For a moment, he simply stared. You look. He paused, something flickering in his eyes. Katerina wore that color to our first formal event together. I can change. No. He extended his hand. You look perfect. She would have approved. In the car, with Adrian driving and the privacy screen raised, Dante outlined the evening's choreography. The Volkov organization has alliances and enemies. Tonight, we'll be observed by both. They'll look for cracks in our story, weaknesses to exploit. So we need to be convincing, I said. We need to be inseparable. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Small touches, lingering glances, the body language of a couple in love. Can you do that? I'm not an actress, Mr. Volkov. Dante, he corrected. If we're engaged, you should use my name. The intimacy of it, his first name in my mouth, felt like crossing a threshold. Dante, I repeated, testing the shape of it. His thumb traced circles on the inside of my wrist, a gesture that sent heat spiraling through me. Good. And for the record, you won't have to act much. Just follow my lead and try not to flinch when I touch you." "I don't flinch. You did when I put the ring on your finger." His gaze was knowing. "You're afraid of what this might become if we're too convincing." I pulled my hand away. "This is a business arrangement. Nothing more." "Of course," he agreed, but something in his smile suggested he didn't believe it any more than I did. The Imperial Hotel ballroom was a sea of designer gowns and power brokers. Dante's hand settled at the small of my back as we entered, possessive and protective. I felt eyes turn our way, whispers rippling through the crowd. "Dante Volkov, is that really you?" A silver-haired man approached, champagne flute in hand. "We'd heard rumors you'd sworn off social events after Katerina. Circumstances change, Victor." Dante's voice was pleasant, but I felt his fingers tighten against my spine. "Allow me to introduce my fiancée, Vivienne Castellano." Victor's eyebrows rose. "Fiancée? My. And how did you two meet?" "Vivienne is Isabel's music therapist," Dante said smoothly. "She's been working miracles with my daughter. It wasn't long before I realized she was working miracles with me as well." The lie flowed easily from his lips, close enough to truth to be believable. Victor studied me with calculating eyes, and I understood this was a test, the first of many tonight. "How lovely," Victor said, his tone suggesting otherwise. "And what does your family think of this whirlwind romance?" "I don't have family," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But Isabel is thrilled, and that's what matters most." Something in my answer must have satisfied him because Victor nodded. "Well then, congratulations. Dante is a lucky man." As he walked away, Dante leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Well done. Victor controls half the shipping routes on the East Coast. His approval carries weight." The evening continued in a parade of introductions and careful conversations. Dante never left my side, his touch constant, a hand at my waist, fingers brushing my shoulder, small gestures that broadcast ownership to everyone watching. "You're good at this," I murmured during a brief moment alone while he fetched us drinks. "At what?" "Playing the devoted fiancé." His smile was dangerous. "Who says I'm playing?" Before I could respond, a woman approached. She was stunning, raven hair, emerald gown, the kind of beauty that belonged on magazine covers. "Dante," she purred. I heard rumors but didn't believe them. "You, engaged again?" "Natasha," Dante acknowledged coolly. "Vivian, this is Natasha Orlova, an old acquaintance." The pause before acquaintance told me everything. This woman had history with Dante, and she wasn't pleased about being replaced. "Charming," Natasha said, her smile razor-sharp as she looked me over. Though, I must say, very different from Katerina. She had such presence, such elegance. The barb was clear. I wasn't elegant enough, wasn't worthy of Katerina's place. "Vivienne has her own strengths," Dante said, his voice dropping to dangerous levels. "And comparisons are tedious." "Of course." Natasha's eyes glittered, though one wonders how little Isabel is handling another woman in her mother's role. The poor child has been through so much trauma. My temper flared. Isabel is healing. She's strong and resilient, and she'll be just fine. "How would you know?" Natasha's tone turned venomous. "You've known her, what, 2 months? I've known that family for years. Katerina was my dearest friend." "Then you know she would want her daughter to be happy," I countered. "And Isabel is happy. For the first time since the accident, she's sleeping through the night. She's smiling. She's healing. That's what Katerina would have cared about." Natasha's expression twisted. Before she could respond, Dante's arm slid around my waist, pulling me against his side. "This conversation is over," he said, ice in every syllable. "Vivienne is my fiancée, and will be my wife. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. I suggest you remember that, Natasha." The threat was unmistakable. Natasha's face paled, and she retreated without another word. I was trembling with anger and adrenaline. Dante guided me toward a quiet alcove, away from prying eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Natasha is complicated. She and Katerina were close, and when Katerina died, Natasha expected you to turn to her," I finished. "Expected to fill the void." She didn't understand that the void couldn't be filled. Not that way. His hands came up to frame my face, tilting it toward his. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Just angry that she used Isabel as a weapon. She won't again." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, a gesture too tender for pretense. "You defended my daughter fiercely, like a mother would." The word hung between us. Mother. Was that what I was becoming to Isabel? And if so, what did that make me to Dante? "We should get back," I said, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze. "In a moment." He didn't release me. "There's something you should know. This arrangement, it's going to get harder before it gets easier. My world is full of people like Natasha, people who will test you, challenge you, look for weaknesses. I can handle it. I know you can." His voice dropped lower. "But I need you to understand what you've agreed to. This isn't just wearing a ring and attending events. You're going to be scrutinized, investigated, potentially threatened. My enemies will look for ways to use you against me. You think I didn't realize that when I agreed? I think you're braver than you know." His eyes searched mine. "And I think Katerina chose well when she saved you all those years ago. She saw what I'm seeing now. Someone who doesn't break under pressure. Someone who fights for the people she loves." The intensity was too much. I pulled away, smoothing my gown with shaking hands. "We should return to the gala. People will notice our absence." The rest of the evening passed in a careful dance of social politics. Dante introduced me to powerful allies and dangerous rivals, each interaction a test of our believability as a couple. By the time we left, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade. In the car on the way home, Dante was quiet, staring out the window at the city lights. "Thank you," he said finally, "for tonight, for defending Isabel against Natasha, for playing your part so convincingly." "It wasn't entirely an act," I admitted. "When she attacked Isabel, I wanted to hit her." His laugh was genuine, transforming his face. I would have paid good money to see that. When we arrived home, Natasha reported that Isabel had fallen asleep within minutes. No terrors, no disturbances. The news filled me with quiet triumph, proof that our work was succeeding. Dante walked me to my door, a courtesy that felt both unnecessary and expected. We stood in the dim corridor, the weight of the evening settling between us. "1 year," he said softly, echoing our agreement. "And then you're free to walk away." "1 year," I confirmed. But as he reached out, his fingers grazing my cheek in a gesture that was becoming familiar, I wondered if either of us truly believed we'd walk away unchanged when the time came. "Good night, Vivian." "Good night, Dante." I closed the door and leaned against it, the sapphire ring heavy on my finger. Through the connecting door, I could hear Isabel's peaceful breathing, the sound of a child finally sleeping without fear. I'd agreed to this arrangement for the clinic, for the children I could help with proper funding. But somewhere along the way, it had become about more than that. It had become about Isabel, about honoring Katerina's memory, about the dangerous pull I felt toward a man I was supposed to be deceiving. 1 year, I reminded myself. Just 1 year of pretending. The lie was getting easier to tell. That should have terrified me more than it did. 3 months into our arrangement, the lines between pretense and reality had blurred beyond recognition. Dante kissed my forehead when he left for work. I found myself waiting for the sound of his car in the driveway each evening. Isabel called me Mama Vivi now, and neither of us corrected her. We looked like a family, felt like a family, and that was the most dangerous development of all. "Tell me about the night you met my father," Isabel asked one afternoon while we practiced piano together. She was learning the same piece her mother had played, Mozart's Sonata No. 16, a delicate composition that required patience and precision. I paused, hands hovering over the keys. The truth was complicated. I'd met Dante the day he hired me, in that cold study where he'd interrogated my credentials. But Isabel wanted a love story, and in the month since the gala, we'd crafted one. "He was very serious," I said, which was true. "All business, asking me questions about helping you sleep better. But I saw something in his eyes when he talked about you. Such love, such fierce determination to protect you. And you fell in love with him because of that?" Had I? The question caught me off guard because I didn't have a clear answer anymore. When had professional boundaries dissolved? When had pretense shifted into genuine feeling? "I fell in love with you first," I said honestly. "And then I realized your father and I wanted the same thing. To see you heal. To see you happy. That shared purpose brought us together." It was the safest truth I could offer. That evening, Dante requested my presence in his study. I'd learned that these summons usually meant business discussions, updates on Isabel's progress, scheduling for upcoming events, adjustments to our public narrative. But when I entered, I found him standing by the window, shoulders tense, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Lucian received intelligence this afternoon. One of my rivals, Alexei Petrov, is making moves against my organization. He's been gathering information about our operations, looking for weaknesses." "What does that have to do with me?" He turned, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes, an expression I'd never witnessed before. "He knows about you, about your connection to Isabel, about our engagement." My blood ran cold. How? Someone talked. One of the staff, perhaps, or someone at the gala who did more digging than expected. He moved toward me, urgent. "Petrov is dangerous. He doesn't play by the rules that govern most of our world. If he thinks taking you would give him leverage. I can protect myself, not against him." Dante's hands gripped my shoulders. "I'm moving you and Isabel to the safe house. It's isolated, heavily guarded, completely off-grid. You'll be there until I neutralize this threat. How long will that take?" "However long necessary." His voice roughened. "I won't risk you, either of you." The genuine terror in his eyes did something to my carefully constructed walls. This wasn't about the arrangement anymore. This was about a man terrified of losing the people he'd come to care for. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning. Early." He pulled me closer, his forehead dropping to rest against mine. "I'm sorry. I knew this world was dangerous, but I thought I could keep it away from you. Keep you separate from the darkness." "You can't protect everyone from everything," I said softly. "Not even you." His laugh was bitter. Katerina used to say the same thing, right before she proved my inability to protect what mattered most. The raw pain in his voice made my chest ache. Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around him, offering the comfort of simple human contact. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into the embrace, his arms coming around me with a desperation that spoke of months of held-back emotion. We stood like that for a long time, two people clinging to each other in the face of threats neither could fully control. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a cottage, nestled in the mountains 3 hours north of the city. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, security cameras covered every angle, and the windows were reinforced with bulletproof glass. Isabel thought it was an adventure. "It's like a castle, Vivi. Can we explore the forest?" "Maybe later," I said, trying to hide my anxiety. "Let's settle in first." Dante had returned to the city to handle Petrov, leaving Adrian and 4 other guards to protect us. The isolation should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like waiting for a bomb to detonate, unsure when or where it would explode. Days passed with no word. Isabel and I fell into a routine. Music lessons, forest walks within the secured perimeter, evening stories by the fireplace. But at night, I lay awake listening to every sound, jumping at shadows. On the 5th day, Isabel had her first terror in 2 months. It came at 2:30 a.m., her screams tearing through the silence. I was there in seconds, but this episode was worse than any I'd witnessed. She thrashed violently, her small body rigid with remembered horror. "The car! The fire! Mama, please! Mama!" I sang the lullabies, played the calming techniques we'd practiced, but nothing penetrated. For 20 agonizing minutes, Isabel remained locked in the nightmare, and I felt helpless, terrified that the stress of our situation had undone months of progress. Finally, her eyes focused. "Vivi, I saw her. I saw Mama." She was trying to tell me something, but the fire was too loud. "Fire?" I brushed sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. "Sweetheart, there wasn't a fire in the accident. Just the crash." "No." Isabel's voice was certain in a way that sent chills down my spine. "There was fire after. Mama kept reaching for something in her bag, trying to get it before the fire got too big. She said I had to remember, had to tell someone." My heart hammered. "Tell someone what?" "The numbers. She made me repeat them before." Isabel's face crumpled. Before she stopped moving, 473298. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to write down the sequence. 473298. A code? A password? "Bella, did your mama say what those numbers were for?" She shook her head, tears streaming. "Just that it was important. That if anything happened to her, I had to remember and tell Papa." Her small hand gripped mine. "But I forgot, Vivi. I forgot until just now. What if it was important?" "It's okay," I soothed, though my mind raced. "You remembered now. That's what matters." After Isabel finally fell back asleep, I sat in the dark, staring at those numbers. Should I call Dante? But phone lines to the safe house were secure, but monitored. Protocol meant nothing sensitive could be discussed remotely. The decision was made for me the next morning when Adrian received word. "Mr. Volkov is coming. He'll arrive by evening." Isabel lit up at the news, bouncing with excitement at seeing her father, but I felt a different kind of anticipation. A pull that had nothing to do with business arrangements and everything to do with how much I'd missed him these past 6 days. Dante arrived as the sun set, emerging from an armored SUV looking exhausted and dangerous. He held Isabel for a long moment, his eyes closed, breathing her in like she was air itself. "Papa, I remembered something," Isabel burst out. "About Mama, about the night of the accident." His gaze snapped to mine over her head, questioning. I nodded slightly. We needed to talk. After Isabel was settled for the night, I joined Dante in the safe house's small study. He poured whiskey for both of us, his movements precise despite obvious fatigue. "Tell me," he said simply. I relayed everything. The terror, Isabel's memory of fire, the numbers Katerina had made her daughter memorize. His face went progressively paler as I spoke. 473298, he repeated, his voice hollow. "That's the code to Katerina's private safe deposit box, the one I've been trying to access for 2 years. The bank wouldn't override her security without the code, and I assumed the information died with her. What's in the box? I don't know. She set it up 6 months before she died, told me it was insurance but wouldn't elaborate. His hands clenched. I thought she was being paranoid. But if she made Isabel memorize the code before she died. She knew, I finished. She knew the accident wasn't an accident. Knew she might not survive. Dante's expression turned lethal. And she left evidence, something important enough to protect with her life. What about Petrov? Is that threat resolved? For now. His attention sharpened on me. But the intelligence Lucian gathered suggests Petrov might have been involved in Katerina's death. If what's in that safe deposit box proves it. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I saw the promise of violence in his eyes, the cold fury of a man who would burn the world for vengeance. We go to the bank tomorrow, he said. You, me, and Isabel. She's the key to all of this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood on the safe house balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring at stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Can't sleep either? Dante's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him in the doorway, still dressed, his face shadowed. Too much to process. He joined me at the railing, close enough that I could feel his warmth in the mountain cold. Vivian, if what's in that box is as dangerous as I suspect, things are going to get worse before they get better. I'm not afraid. You should be. He turned to me, his expression raw. I've pulled you into my world, made you a target, put you in a position where my enemies see you as leverage. And for what? A business arrangement? Money for your clinic? It stopped being just business months ago, I admitted. You know that. When? His voice dropped. When did it change for you? I thought back through the months, the morning coffees, the shared worries over Isabel, the moments when his hand would find mine without conscious thought. I don't know exactly. Somewhere between the gala and now, somewhere in all the pretending, it became real. He moved closer, his hand coming up to cup my face. For me, it was the first night I watched you sing to Isabel. Watched you give my daughter what I couldn't. Peace, comfort, hope. I fell in love with your kindness before I knew your name. My breath caught. Dante. I know this complicates everything, he continued. I know we agreed to 1 year, to walking away cleanly. But I can't pretend anymore, Vivian. I can't pretend that you're just an employee, just a convenience. You've become essential to me, to us. This is dangerous, I whispered. Not just because of your world. Because if I let myself love you, if I let myself believe this could be real, and then it ends, it won't end. His certainty was absolute. Not unless you want it to. I'm done with temporary, done with arrangements and pretense. I want you, Vivian. Not as a fake fiancé, not as Isabel's therapist, as my partner, my wife, the mother of my children. The plural registered. Children. A future beyond 1 year, beyond pretense. We barely know each other, I said weakly. I know you sing off-key when you think no one's listening. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and hate sleeping in late. I know you'd walk through fire for Isabel, and that you see good in a world that's shown you mostly darkness. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I know that Katerina saved you because she saw what I see. Someone worth fighting for. And I know that I love you in a way I didn't think possible after losing her. Tears spilled onto my cheeks. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to. Katerina was my past, the woman who showed me I was capable of love. But you're my future, if you'll have me. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. Say yes, Vivian. Not to an arrangement, to a real marriage, a real life together. I should have been cautious, should have remembered all the reasons this was complicated. But standing there under stars that witnessed impossible things, I couldn't find a single reason to say no. Yes, I whispered. His kiss was gentle at first, reverent, like I was something precious. But when I responded, when my arms wrapped around his neck and pulled him closer, the kiss deepened into something that made my knees weak and my heart race. We stood there on that balcony, wrapped in each other, until the cold drove us inside. And for the first time since this arrangement began, I fell asleep in Dante Volkov's arms. Not from pretense or strategy, but from simple desire to be close. Everything had changed. The arrangement was over. The real marriage was just beginning. The bank vault was cold and silent, the kind of quiet that amplified every breath. Isabel stood between Dante and me, her small hand tight in mine, as the attendant retrieved Katerina's safe deposit box. "Are you ready for this?" I asked Dante quietly. His jaw was set, eyes dark with anticipation and dread. "I've been ready for 2 years." The attendant placed the box on the table and discreetly withdrew. Dante entered the code Isabel had remembered, 473298, and the lock released with a soft click. Inside were 3 items: a USB drive, a sealed envelope addressed to Dante, and a small velvet pouch. His hands trembled as he picked up the envelope, breaking the seal with careful precision. I watched emotions flicker across his face as he read: shock, rage, grief, and finally, grim determination. "What does it say?" I asked. He handed me the letter, his voice rough. "Read it." Katerina's elegant script covered the page. "My beloved Dante, if you're reading this, my worst fears have come true. I'm dead, and Isabel is without her mother. I'm sorry for the secrets I kept, but please understand, I did it to protect you both. For 6 months, I've been gathering evidence against Alexei Petrov. He's been embezzling from your organization, selling information to your enemies, and planning a coup to take over your territory. The USB drive contains proof, financial records, recorded conversations, everything needed to destroy him. But Dante, my love, he knows I discovered his betrayal. The brake line on my car. I inspected it myself after noticing unusual sounds. It's been tampered with. I have maybe hours, maybe days before he makes his move. I'm not telling you this to run or to hide. I'm telling you because I need you to promise me something. Don't let revenge consume you. Protect Isabel first. Always. She's your future, not your past. And if I'm gone, don't close yourself off from love. You have so much to give, Dante. Find someone who sees the man I see, the one who's capable of such fierce devotion, such tenderness. Let yourself be happy again. The velvet pouch contains something for whoever you choose to love next. My blessing. My hope that she'll care for our daughter the way I would have. I love you. Always. Katerina. My hands shook as I finished reading. Katerina had known, had spent her last months collecting evidence, knowing it might cost her life. And the pouch. Dante opened it with reverent hands, and a ring tumbled out. Not the sapphire I wore, but a delicate band with 3 diamonds. Past, present, future. She bought this the week before she died, he said, his voice breaking. I thought it was for herself, but she meant it for me, I whispered, understanding dawning. Dante, I think Katerina knew. About us. About what I would become to Isabel. That's impossible. We hadn't even met. But she knew I existed. That she'd saved me years ago. That I was studying music therapy. I looked at the letter again. Find someone who sees the man I see. What if she orchestrated this? What if she knew that if something happened to her, I'd be the one who could help Isabel. Dante stared at me like I'd spoken in tongues. You think my wife planned her own death and our relationship from beyond the grave? Not her death, but maybe. Maybe she prepared for the possibility. Saved me as a teenager, taught me the skills and songs I'd need, created a connection that would eventually lead me here. The pieces fell into place with eerie precision. Dr. Chen recommended me for this position, but Dr. Chen also worked at the hospital where Katerina volunteered. She knew about Katerina's connection to me. Jesus, Dante breathed. Katerina's last gift. Not just evidence to protect me, but you to protect Isabel. Before we could process further, his phone rang. Lucian's voice was urgent when Dante answered on speaker. Boss, we have a problem. Petrov just made his move. He's taken the Eastern warehouse, and he's holding 3 of our men hostage. He's demanding a meeting. You, alone, or he starts executing them. Dante's expression went lethal. I'm on my way. No, I said immediately. It's a trap. He's using them as bait. I know, but I can't let my people die. He pulled the USB drive from the box. Lucian, take this to the federal prosecutor. Everything we need to bury Petrov legally is on here, but I'm going to that meeting. Dante, please. He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes burning with intensity. I have to end this. For Katerina, for Isabel, for us. I can't build a future while the past still has its claws in me. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You said I'm your partner. That means I don't let you walk into danger alone. I gripped his wrists. Besides, Petrov won't expect me. That might be an advantage. Every instinct in him fought against it. I could see the war in his eyes. But finally he nodded. You stay in the car with Adrian. Armed security, windows up, engine running. At the first sign of trouble, you leave. No arguments. No arguments, I agreed, lying through my teeth. We dropped Isabel with Natasha at the safe house, under heavy guard. I hugged her tight, breathing in her little girl scent of strawberry shampoo. Mama Vivi, are you and Papa going to fight the bad man? She asked. We're going to make sure he can't hurt anyone anymore, I said carefully. Be careful. I don't want to lose another mama. The words nearly destroyed me. I kissed her forehead. I promise. We'll come back to you. The warehouse was on the docks, a sprawling building that reeked of rust and salt water. Dante's men had established a perimeter, but it was clear Petrov held the superior position inside. He's got sharpshooters on the roof, Adrian reported. 3 hostages visible through the north windows tied to chairs. Petrov himself is center room, waiting. Dante checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. The prosecutor has the evidence by now. If this goes wrong... It won't, I interrupted. He looked at me, and for a moment the dangerous mob boss facade cracked, revealing the man beneath. I love you, Vivienne. Whatever happens, know that. I love you too. Now go end this. I watched him walk toward the warehouse, every muscle in my body screaming to follow. Adrian's hand on my shoulder kept me in place. He knows what he's doing, Miss Castellano. Mr. Volkov has survived situations much worse than this. But 5 minutes after Dante entered, gunfire erupted. I was out of the car before Adrian could stop me, running toward the building with a desperation that overrode all sense. Adrian shouted behind me, but I didn't stop. Inside was chaos. Dante had taken down 2 of Petrov's men, but Petrov himself had a gun to one of the hostages' heads, a young man who couldn't be more than 20. How romantic, Petrov sneered when he saw me. The fiancé comes to rescue her prince. Except in this story, you both die. It's over, Alexei, Dante said, his own weapon trained on Petrov. The federal prosecutor has everything. Financial records, recorded conversations, proof you murdered Katerina. You're finished. If I'm finished, I'm taking all of you with me. Petrov's finger tightened on the trigger. What happened next occurred in seconds, but felt like hours. I saw Dante's intention. He was going to take the shot, even if it meant Petrov might reflexively kill the hostage. I saw the young man's terror, saw the calculation in Petrov's eyes, and I remembered something Katerina had taught me years ago, a self-defense technique she'd insisted I learn. Sometimes the best weapon is the element of surprise. I screamed, a raw, piercing sound that shattered the tension. Petrov's head swung toward me, his aim shifting for just a second. That second was all Dante needed. The gunshot was deafening. Petrov went down, the weapon falling from his hand. The hostage collapsed, shaking but alive. It was over. Dante crossed to me in 3 strides, pulling me against him with a force that spoke of terror and relief. You weren't supposed to come in. You promised. I lied, I admitted. I couldn't let you face him alone. You're insane. I'm in love with you. It's basically the same thing. His laugh was shaky but real. And when he kissed me there in that warehouse, surrounded by federal agents who'd arrived to arrest Petrov's remaining men, it felt like the first breath after drowning. 6 months later, the music therapy clinic opened on a bright spring morning, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows onto instruments of every kind. The sign above the door read, Katerina's House, a place for healing through music. Isabel cut the ribbon with oversized scissors, her grin wide and proud. Mama Katerina would love this, right, Vivi? She would, I agreed, emotion thick in my throat. She absolutely would. Dante's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me close. We'd married quietly a month ago. No society gala this time. Just close family and the people who mattered. Isabel had been our flower girl, scattering rose petals with solemn concentration. The ring I wore now was the one Katerina had left. Past, present, future. A blessing from a woman I'd never stop being grateful to. Thank you, Dante murmured against my hair. For everything. For saving my daughter. For loving us both. For making me believe in second chances. Thank you for not giving up on me, I replied. For seeing past the homeless girl Katerina saved to the woman I became. Isabel tugged on our hands. Come on, the first kids are here. I want to show them the piano. We followed her inside, toward the sound of children's laughter and the tentative notes of someone learning to play. This collection of broken pieces finding harmony together, was what Katerina had envisioned. Not just healing for Isabel, but healing for countless others. That night, after the clinic's successful opening, after Isabel fell asleep with a smile on her face, Dante and I stood on our balcony overlooking the garden where Katerina's roses still bloomed. Do you think she knew? I asked. How it would all turn out? I think she hoped, Dante said. And maybe that's the same thing. She saved you, knowing you'd need those skills someday. She left clues, knowing I'd find you when I needed you most. She orchestrated it all, in her way. A final act of love. Her greatest one. He turned me to face him, his eyes soft in the moonlight. We're having another baby. I blinked. What? Isabel asked me yesterday if she could have a little brother or sister. Said Mama Katerina appeared in her dream and told her it was time for our family to grow. He smiled, and I thought, why not? Why not expand this imperfect, beautiful family we've built? Tears spilled down my cheeks. You want more children? With me? I want everything with you. More children, more years, more mornings waking up beside you, more nights singing Isabel, and whoever else comes along, to sleep. He kissed me softly. Katerina gave me you. I'm not wasting that gift. I wrapped my arms around him, breathing in the scent of his cologne and the garden's roses. Katerina's roses. A dead woman's love had brought us together, had healed us both, had created something beautiful from tragedy. And now we'd spend the rest of our lives honoring that love by building a future she'd never see but had made possible. Yes, I whispered. To more children, more life, more love. To all of it. Somewhere in the garden, I could have sworn I heard the soft notes of a Russian lullaby carried on the wind. A reminder that love never truly dies. It transforms. It adapts. It finds new ways to shelter the people we leave behind. Katerina had sent me to save her daughter, but in the process, she'd saved us all, and that was the greatest gift of all.